I've got coffee. I can do this.
I got my venti water.
Are you a morning person, Andy, or is this?
No, totally morning person. Yeah,
okay,
for sure.
Yeah, me too.
That's my favorite part of the day. Just get up, coffee, practicing. So this is not too far off my beaten schedule here. So
beautiful.
Cheers.
Love it.
And I've got my Ember cup, which is very important. It keeps your coffee warm.
Ooh.
Oh, I need that. My wife needs it more than me. My wife takes like 2 hours to drink a coffee, so I need to tell her about that.
I'm telling you, I know. We just passed Valentine's. I hope we're getting this. This is the most important part of the podcast.
Of course.
Yeah, it's an app controlled. Coffee.
Oh, no
warmer,
way.
Basically. Oh yeah, and I'll get my coffee going. I'll pick up the guitar. Next thing I know, a half hour, 45 minutes has passed. Like, oh wow,
it's an iced coffee.
It's still freaking nice and warm. So
that's awesome.
There's not a better gift for the coffee person in your life.
You're spending my money for me already, and we haven't officially started yet.
I'm telling you, it's the most valuable. It's not even a pedal. It's the most valuable information I could impart. I need to get an Ember endorsement, a sponsorship. I'm gonna sell them some mugs.
Yes.
Oh,
well,
that's awesome.
I mean, that seems like the perfect introduction to kick off our new
coffee.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Our new coffee line coming soon. No, or a coffee cup, I should say. Well, Good morning, afternoon, good night, wherever you're in the world listening. Welcome to another episode of Chairmen of the Boards.
Nice.
We have a special guest and a dear friend of mine, Mr. Andy Timmons here.
Yeah. Good morning, Brian.
Chat through just just everything. And Grant, it's great to see you. Great to have you back. As you can tell, we are one chairman down today, but it's okay. We have Mr. Timmons to help here. Mason,
I'm an honorary chairman person.
Well, you got the hair of Mason, so if you could just give us your best Mason impression right now, just so we feel.
I don't know that I have one, but anyway,
he's got the amps, he's got the guitars. Mason has a lot of those too.
There you go. Well,
and we'll do our best. Mason is out filming a video with another artist today, so
he's seeing somebody else. I see how this is.
Welcome, Andy. We're so glad to have you.
Well, happy to see. In full disclosure, I live about 10 minutes away from Brian's shop at the sanctuary, so he sees me too often. I get the feeling, and he's always been very gracious. So that's the the blessing and the curse, depending on who you are here. That I can stop by in a very short notice and man, I need this tweak or this thing isn't working or whatever it might be, or I got to rebuild my board by Thursday. Yeah,
and it's Wednesday.
He's been the best pit crew ever for me, and I'm very, very thankful and grateful for Brian's presence here. Yeah, and the sanctuary itself. I know they're a sponsor and we like to plug them, but man, I'm so fortunate that shop is nearby me. Man, I'm very, very lucky indeed. So
yeah,
anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll just kick it off with just kind of, I mean, I'm sure we all know your background history, but just tell us a little bit about like your background history and I guess.
Sure.
I mean, when did you start playing? And because I know people start at all different ages and you'll see, you'll see 5-year-olds that will be like playing guitar. And I have a 5-year-old and I'm like, I don't see how that happens, but I've seen people do it. So
it is pretty staggering the young ages that you see this level of proficiency. My son, who's just about to turn 20, just started playing at 16. People would always ask me, "So is your son playing yet?" Well, he was born like last week, but give him some time. But yeah, the bug didn't bite until about 16, and I started hearing Pantera and Slipknot coming from his bedroom. I thought, this is new, because he showed no interest. I mean, this is what Dad did, but he clearly was immersed in it, whether he wanted to be or not. But I did start when I was about 5.
Okay.
I was not shredding on YouTube, but I was. I had a toy plastic guitar playing "I'm Not Your Stepping Stone" by the Monkees. I didn't have a Halo yet either. So I just one string, simple stuff. Smoke on the Water hadn't been written yet, so it was I started pre-Smoke on the Water.
Wow,
I'm that old, right?
That was the first song I ever learned to play, and
Smoke on the Water.
I smoked that song out of the water by playing it so much.
All right,
did you play Smoke on the Water? Is kind of like chopsticks for piano. Like everyone can pick it up and play. Like you got to know Smoke on the Water, right?
Yeah.
But can you play the whole song?
No.
There's
no.
a line that gets drawn.
I thought what you just played was the whole song, and now you're telling me there's more I need to learn.
For our purposes, maybe that was just the radio edit. It's just the riff repeated over and over. So yeah, it was pretty much just classic. I was the youngest of four guys. I had three older brothers, but we were all 4 years apart. So my eldest brother was 12 years older than I when I was born in 1963, and 8 and 4 respectively. And they all were huge music fans, voracious record buyers, and we had acoustic guitars in the house. There was like a government issue Silvertone acoustic that was in most households seemingly in the 60s in the States. And so I was kind of just always around it, and my brothers were very much my role models. And I guess my mom saw that I had the passion for it and started buying these plastic guitars. But I could really had the little plastic strings, but you could play melodies, So I would be shown these things from my brothers, and when they weren't around, as years went on, I'd just sneak into the rooms and pick up the guitar and just try to teach myself. Mm-hmm. And by the age of 13, I was in my first band, having just been self-taught all that time by, listening to just 70s rock records. I was a big Beatles fan and all the 60s stuff because of my brothers, but my first records I bought were like Kiss, Kiss Alive and stuff like that. So I really learned from Ace Frehley in that record, and just once I figured out they were tuned down a half step, that was an epiphany. And somebody show me just the bar chord, and a pentatonic. And you could have a lifetime of music just with that little bit of knowledge, So, I had a record player in my ears and just a complete, attraction to the instrument. It looked great, it sounded great. You just wanted to do it, and it's still that way to this day. So that's my story. I started playing and I haven't stopped. I mean, we could get as specific and as detailed as you want, but it just kind of went step to step. Then I got a teacher when I was 16, because by then I really knew that, music was going to be my life one way or the other. It was the only thing I was interested in. And he taught me how to read the really very simple reading lessons, but he was a jazz guy and played very much like Barney Kessel, and, would start turning me on to the records of Joe Pass and Barney, and even what Oscar Peterson on the I almost said Oscar Mayer. Oscar Peterson on the piano, a much bigger influence than Oscar Mayer. Arguably a big influence in your youth. Lots of baloney. Maybe that's got something to do with it. So my ears started, getting more educated, and when it came time to college, the local university in Evansville, Indiana, offered classical guitar as a major. I couldn't think about leaving town at that point because I was in a band that was doing very well locally. And so I knew nothing about classical guitar, but went to the library and started checking out, Segovia and Julian Bream records and trying to figure some things out. And I auditioned on an electric guitar to get in because I didn't have a nylon string guitar, but they saw that I could play, and I got in, and it was a couple of great years of immersion in classical music that I knew nothing about prior. Wow. And had a great teacher named Renato Buturi, who was from Italy. So now I'm getting some worldly influence in my life. But, I'd been hearing about the University of Miami and how the Dregs had formed there. I was a Steve Morse fan, and Pat Metheny had gone there as a student, and within a week got made a teacher or something crazy like that. But I was starting to aspire more than just being a rock player. I was really wanting to, I'd heard Mike Stern and I'd heard Carlton and Robin Ford, and definitely Lukather was a good, stepping forward point where there was a great rock and incredible tone and intention, but there was a bit of intellect in there too. He was slipping in some chromaticism and stuff that he was getting from Carlton and from some other jazzier guys. So maybe from my foundation with that original teacher of getting some of that jazz, I was really interested in growing, And then, from Miami, I ended up in Texas. That's how I ended up here, was with some musicians I met there. Steve Bailey on bass, who's a great bassist. He's now head of the bass department at Berkeley, and great drummer named Ray Brinker. They were in the jazz world but wanted to be in a rock band, so they recruited me in Miami. We moved to Denton because they had gone to North Texas. Though I didn't go to school there, a lot of people think I did, but I hung out in Denton a lot, and that's where the Eddie Timmons band formed in 1988. That demo tape got me the gig in Danger, and that led me on that kind of whole path with getting to know what that part of the industry was like, and back when MTV played music and was really important. Those were the days where MTV dictated what got on the radio. If you weren't on MTV, that's how big the videos were. If you weren't getting play on MTV, you couldn't get on radio. So anyway, we kind of got in on the tail end of those years, and it was a great experience. But what it really taught me was what I thought was the Holy Grail was the complete opposite. So this has nothing to do with why I love this instrument, why I love the pursuit of being a better musician. It was just a corporate thing, and that band Danger Danger was kind of fitting the bill for what was needed, and it was cool to be part of it. And again, it was a rock star, fantasy come true, because there we were touring with Kiss. We did 2 different tours with them, opening up and playing arenas, and it was incredible in that regard. But as far as the real me, which was I just want to play the music I really want to play, write my own stuff. And so once that band kind of had its run and things were tailing off, I just came back to Texas, because I moved to New York when I joined that band. Came back to Texas, and my band had been already recording, like I say, since '88. So all these what I thought were demos became my first record, called Ear Ecstasy. And that was the beginning of that part of my life, that part of my career, where I was finding out and discovering who I was, because I was just kind of this, and still am to a degree, this guy that loves everything and likes to do a lot of different things. So I'm primarily known as a rock guitar player. I'm also the guy that toured with Olivia Newton-John for 15 years and absolutely, enjoyed at the same level that I did my years with Simon Phillips, which couldn't be more contrapuntal musically, and a different set of challenges, but equally challenging, I would say, to do authentically. But I'm also the guy that made a bossa nova record. It's like I love all these things, and as I think about how crazy that might be for some of the fans that know me from the rock stuff, my favorite artists are the ones that really follow their muse, regardless of what they think the fan base wants from them. And Todd Rundgren is a prime example where he gets out and plays shows, and he's kind of got to do Hello, It's Me, and I Saw the Light, which are great pop tunes from his early career. But he's gone on to do incredible, diverse, really experimental, adventurous, creative stuff. And I don't like every one of his records, definitely not. But I love that he does it. You know what I mean? I love that he goes on that limb. And this is what I'm into. This is what I'm doing. Hope you dig it, whatever. But this is what's in my heart. And that's kind of the way I've conducted my career since the Danger days. Again, I don't diminish that time for me, but again, it wasn't my band. I was very much a hired gun and enjoyed playing it because it was just, pop, good hair metal, or whatever you want to call it, pop metal. And it was, was some really good material and all that. But anyway, just finding my voice as far as, just wanting to write the music I write and play that. Yeah. That's my happy place.
So when you were with, sorry, Grant, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. As well. So Olivia Newton-John, it's how you said 15 years. What was the year that you started with her? Because the reason I say this is because my parents loved her and listened to her music and stuff. So
sure,
I have grown up listening to your guitar playing without knowing it.
Well,
because partially, maybe I don't know.
Well, no, the thing that there's a gap between the main part of her career where most of her known work was recorded from the early 70s to like the mid 80s, right? That was the bulk of her time. And I didn't start with her until the late 90s. So it was clearly past, but that being said, the guitar playing on those records is stellar. And a lot of it is John Ferrer, who wrote probably about 70% of her hit tunes. Just this great guitar player from Australia that she knew probably from Hank Marvin and the Shadows, because, or maybe they knew each other. Oh, you know what? Actually, what am I saying? She was married to John Ferrer was married to Pat Ferrer, who was like Olivia's best buddy in Australia, and they moved to England together when she won a song, a singing contest, and that started her career in her late teens. That's how she ended up in London and she ended up singing backup for Cliff Richard. And anyway, there's this whole history that you can read about her and see. But no, so my gigs with her were, and there's some great videos. There was a particular concert that got recorded in Sydney with the Sydney Symphony at the famous opera house,
Okay.
So getting to go to Australia with Olivia is literally like going with royalty, and so but for me, so I got to play all those hits, but she continued to record and do some really, really cool records along the way. And I'm involved in a little bit of that. But it was mainly just kind of, being part of her legacy and her touring and bringing that music to her fans. And I was not only her guitar player, but I was her music director. So I was the band leader, kind of in charge of, getting the band together, which was kind of easy when you get the right players, Every now and then we'd have somebody in the band that wasn't quite of the same mindset, which is really respect for her and the music. But she was a blessing to work with because I just loved her, and I certainly loved the body of work, but she was just an amazing, God, I hate to use the word past tense. This is one of my first interviews I've done, and she's been gone now for a couple years. But no, she was just an amazing person, just full of, as most Australians I have found, are full of wit and just good intellect and good heart. You know what I mean? But she was a lot of fun to be around, and a tireless worker, and did a lot of good. I always would say she used her power for good. She did a lot for cancer awareness, that's what eventually took her life. But she survived since the early 90s when she first had breast cancer. And saved my life. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, I had my own bout with cancer 10 years ago, and had I not heard her voice in my head about when she first was diagnosed, she was told she was fine by 3 other doctors, but she just knew something inside her was telling her something's wrong. You need to get the check. So first doctor, no, you're fine. Second doctor, you're fine. Finally, she went to doctor. Oh, thank God you came in. We found this lump, and we need to operate now. It was one of those things. I had a similar thing where I knew something was wrong. I could see it in my eyes when I looked in the mirror. I said, "Man, I'm not feeling good in a certain area of my body." Went to the doctor on a Monday. Thursday, I'm in surgery. And it was like an extremely aggressive form. Had I not gone, if I'd have just said, "Oh, I'm fine," I'm a guy, I don't need to go to the doctor. All of a sudden, I'm Norm Macdonald. Doctors. She literally saved my life. Had I not, listened to that voice from her. So let me impart that to everybody. Listening now. Just if you ever think anything's wrong, don't wait. We've lost a lot of folks over the years. For guys, it's prostate cancer usually, or mine was testicular. So you never know, because that's usually a younger man's disease. So all that to say is, and I chose sticking with her over some other, more famous rock bands that might offer gigs along the way. I don't say that to name drop or because I won't name drop, and not to brag in any way. But it was like, it also became obvious throughout my life. It's like, man, if I'm going to leave home, it better be with people that I love, playing music that I really want to play, not just to. When you're younger, you say yes to everything because you have to, and you're eager to, and you're happy to, and I certainly did. There's some very silly gigs. There's pictures of this somewhere, but I did a St. Patrick's Day. It was like a wedding type band, but they would do freelance parties and whatnot. And there was some gig where it was a St. Patrick's Day party at Las Colinas somewhere. Maybe it was at the Four Seasons or something. And we had to wear leprechaun outfits. All right, that's what we're doing today. There's pictures somewhere. I haven't seen them yet, but God, the internet could be, my least best friend at some point. There's plenty of other incriminating pictures on the web of me, but anyway, that would be you just say yes because you need the bread, and luckily I don't feel like I have to wear a leprechaun outfit as much these days. But you never know. Who knows what might come up, If Paul McCartney calls and asks if I'll wear a leprechaun outfit, then you're going to see me in a leprechaun outfit.
What's a different?
Call me Paul. Yeah.
Anyway, Paul, if you're listening,
if Paul, you're listening,
Andy to come play for you.
Our lips too. Yeah. I
have so many questions for you, man.
And then stop my babbling and please.
No. It's just you have
it.
Such a prolific career, and so it's just like, man, where do you begin? But I feel like I always have in mind.
Yeah.
Or the person listening, let's say there's a 16-year-old listening. I always go back to the decision that you made. You kind of brisked past it, but I think it was a big one. You mentioned earlier in the podcast today that, you just kind of knew. And I don't know if that was at 16. I know that's when you said you kind of started getting lessons. But at one point, you knew music was for me. And that is that's a big decision, because typically in the arts, the average person, it struggles to make a career. So if you choose music, you are not choosing an easy path necessarily. There's the 1% that make it big, and or less than that even. But music is a passion, and then you kind of hope for money along the way, I think, is probably the typical mindset. But it sounded like it wasn't even a decision for you. And so I'm just curious, is that the case? And secondly, if you were to give advice to that 16-year-old listening right now, what are some of the keys that you would say, like, this is what actually really helped me along the way? And I've heard even on that vein as well from so many guys that we've chatted to here and in my own interviews, one of the biggest things you can do is be a nice person. And actually be good to be with on the road, because if you aren't, if you're a pain to be with on the road, even if you're the greatest guitar player ever, no one's going to want to be with you. But what are some of the key things that you can kind of point to along the way that have really helped move your career forward? And you can kind of, with hindsight now, you can look back and say, oh, that was a pivotal moment because, or whatever it might be.
Well, I mean, that's a great question and very accurate in your assessment. There wasn't a day of a particular decision. It was just kind of this evolving awareness that this is it for me. But it wasn't a mindset of like, oh gosh, this might be hard, or gosh, or I didn't have a mother. My mother raised me. My folks split when I was very young, and there could have been a parent going, oh, musicians, bad drugs and all these things. And I witnessed a little bit of that, but Danger was like pizza and Diet Coke was about the worst, we got it was just kind of this unwavering faith and not necessarily the smartest faith, but there was just faith that I'm just going to keep doing this. And there was never a plan other than the pursuit. Like I said, along the way, I made that decision to, I want to learn how to read, because I was reading Guitar Player magazine and seeing Lukather and Carlton and Tommy Tedesco. They're making their living in the studio, so maybe that's something I could do. So I guess I must have been aware of the eventual necessity of making a living, right? So then it was just kind of this ever flowing river of direction that could change. Now I'm living in Denton. How the hell did that happen? I'm living in Miami, In Evansville, Indiana, where I grew up, it's a medium-sized but smallish town, and certainly smallish town mindset. There wasn't a lot of people, really embarking and getting out. And this is a phrase that I was reminded of years later by just a guy, Bruce Jeffries, who ran a shop called, ironically, the Dallas Pro Shop in Evansville, Indiana. Maybe that was some kind of sign. But I was in a local band called Taylor Bay, and we'd recorded a record, and now we're getting a lot of major label feedback. We were on the verge of getting a deal, and it was a really good sounding and original band. But I was the youngest in the band, and there were guys in the band kind of settling down, and there weren't signs of this really being 1,000% for everybody. And I was considering leaving town to go to Miami. And again, this guy, Bruce, reminded me this years later when I did a clinic at another music store that he was working at. And I was asking him his advice. He says, if you don't go to Miami, you're going to regret this the rest of your life. Mm. But he reminded me of that long after Danger, long after everything that I've been kind of doing in what I would say the more successful part of my career. But I did remember it. I said, and it would have taken that a little bit of positive support of somebody going, this is a good move, because I wasn't a real confident, I was very shy in general, and still not the most confident person. So sometimes it's just the right word from the right person at the right time that can make that decision or help you go that direction. And again, the real benefit being the mom that, unquestioning me, just, whatever it is you want to do with your life, go for it 1,000%. And that was her mindset. Yep. And that's what she did. She had to raise 4 boys essentially on her own and worked her butt off, very selflessly. And so she just wanted her sons to find their passion and go for it, which, I can credit her so much for not discouraging me, Mm-hmm. So then along the way, like you're saying, Grant, you see, it's a very incredible thing to have to say, but just being being a good person and being somebody that other people want to work with. There's a very small amount of musicians that get big enough that can treat people unkindly or
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the word. There's my Octavia. I was looking for that all day yesterday. Okay, I thought Mike Dane had it. Squirrel, shiny, but there it is. It's an old Roger Mayer Octavia I was wanting to use for a track. It's here at the house. That's what I'm doing. I'm in the middle of a record, by the way, folks.
Oh, nice.
So, but it's such a basic thing that you shouldn't even have to say. It's not like through my life I can't say I'm going to make an effort to be nice. It's just something I always had, just the nature of wanting everybody to be okay. And maybe that, and it's exactly how I function musically. And this is something that, I became aware of as I became more and more of a teacher over time. The role of a band member, and it's not just about you, it's about every component, what's happening in the overall picture. Where do I fit in? Am I overplaying? Am I underplaying? What needs to happen? What doesn't need to happen? But I'm the same way walking down the street. I'll make an effort to say hello or smile if I think somebody's receptive to that. If they're not, you can feel that. Or if I'm walking head on into somebody's path and not aware of me, I'm not going to carry on just to show that I'm right. I'm going to adapt. I'll move out of the way or make some adjustment. I realize that the way I live my life is exactly how I function in music, meaning that I'm just aware of all these things, but it's just a very natural thing. It wasn't a conscious, hey, this is the way I want to do this, but it's just as I've evolved and as I see how I do well, when I do well musically, it's because of that. It's my overall awareness and making sure I'm going to know if I feel a push and pull between the bass player and the drummer, I'm going to find that middle ground. I'm going to make it feel good somehow.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't have to, and it becomes this effortless thing. It's not a common thing to have it be so effortless to where but those are the great moments when things can flow and you don't have to, even though they're very subconscious. I'm usually not thinking, oh gosh, that kick drum wasn't quite where, I might want that a little. I'm feeling it, but I may not be assessing it, so consciously in real time, but it's happening. Mm-hmm. There's all these calculations going on, and it's the way I live my life as well. So yeah, to fortify Grant's point and comment that it's, you're on stage for 90 minutes, maybe it's the other 22 and a half hours. If you're not cool to hang with, or you're late, or you're disrespectful, I don't care how great you're playing. You're not on the gig on the next, when there's a choice to make a change, and that, like I was saying in Olivia's group, overall, largely the core people that we had were family. Every now and then somebody couldn't do a tour. We might have to get somebody in. They might be cool, or we had some just absolute disastrous, they came in with great recommendations, but like all these things I'm saying, late, not learning, not being respectful of the material, not really having it together, boy, they're not going to last, and why should they,
Yeah.
This is the other thing too, as you talk about nuggets of things that I might say to a younger player, but this is the way that it just was for me. I treated and still do every gig like it's the most important gig I'm ever going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Brian Meter at the Sanctuary used to give me such a hard time because there was one summer I did a residency of a Wednesday night at this really tiny little wine bar called Zen Zen. And I bring in Bobby Sparks and James Driscoll and Mike Medina, some of my favorite musicians, and I'd have this rig set up that was, arguably massive for this little wine bar. And he saw a video of me playing with Olivia Newton-John at the Albert Hall, right? And he said, your rig was bigger at Zen Zen. I was like, yeah. For Olivia's gig, I was using these transatlantic little 30 watt Vox AC30 Mesa sounding. They were great, but yeah. All that to say is, I'm gonna spend the time to whatever the gig is. Even if it's just a one-off, whatever, I'm gonna learn the material. I'm gonna come in with my shit together, because the material deserves it. The other players deserve it. But basically, I don't want to let myself down, and I don't want to let anybody else down, and it's that, but it's that mentality that got me the gig with Simon Phillips. It got me the gig with Olivia, because the first time Simon and I played together, it was a Hoshino event in 1993 at an AM show. It was called the Axe Attack, and it was Ibanez back, and they still do these large shows, but they're not as frequent as they used to be. Meaning with all the, gear manufacturers would put on these huge concerts and get all their dealers and, celebrate their brand. And so Ibanez was doing this, or Hoshino, I should say, because Simon was a Tama guy, Hoshino. They wanted to feature all the heavy hitters, Vi, Satch, Paul Gilbert played that night, Sean Lane, who was a Ibanez guy briefly, Alex Skolnick and Reb Beach, and they needed kind of a band. They needed a band that was going to back all these guys. So they got Simon Phillips. I was still in Danger, but they knew that I had this ability and wanted to promote that. So they put me with Simon and a bass player called Gerald Veasley. He was a great bass player from Weather Report at the time. So we were the house band, and Simon's request was like, well, we'll do all these other songs, but we need to do songs from my catalog. And his thing is very fusion, very, I call it adult chords, 15, 16 time signatures, not your run-of-the-mill stuff. So that was a great night for me because people only knew me from Danger. Your Ecstasy, my first solo record, wasn't out yet. But here I was getting to back up all these great players, but also playing these burn-in fusion songs with Simon. And Satriani couldn't come in for the rehearsal for that particular gig, so I knew his tunes or well enough to get them together. So I was able to rehearse Simon and the band, So 4 years later, Simon was about to do a tour. His regular guitar player Ray Russell couldn't do it, so he said, "Oh man, that guy Andy, he had his shit together. He know you play the stuff, And so I got that gig. So it was through him that I got the gig with Olivia because they had the same management, and Olivia's management said, "Hey, Olivia's coming. She hadn't toured in years. She's coming to America with this Australian band, and one of the guitar players can't make it. Put the feelers out. Who do you guys know?" And Simon goes, "Well, Andy. Well, Andy'd be great. So I get a message from him. Andy, he fancy working with Olivia Newton-John. Like what are the hours, right? No, it was like, that sounds fun. The management saw once they brought the Australian band over. I'm the new kid. We have such a great vibe with the band. They said, "Oh, Andy's got his shit together. We can make him the band leader and form a U.S. based group." And that's what they did.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that speaks really well to pretty much like any musician, any genre. Like,
sure.
It's important to you. You take it serious, especially, and I have done this recently. Is like I do like church gigs. Gigs. I do church worship sets. So I'll fill in DFW. There's a lot of churches, so there's a lot of opportunity.
For sure. Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people, and it's the same thing as like people communicate, like especially when you're being hired to play something, there's like a level of expectation. Obviously,
Absolutely.
For yourself, for yourself, you should have a level of expectation, but as an employer hiring you, but like this church I've been playing at, I've realized like the music director and the drummer, they're like, "Yeah, you're really solid. You're better than a lot of people we've been hiring." Nice. And they talk to other people, and those people talk to other people, course. And like that opens up opportunity in whatever you're doing. So like for you, you having 110%. And like giving 110%, and you're excellent in what you're doing, and you're taking ownership in your part, and you're working together as a team. It's just like, I agree with you. Like you can be the coolest person ever. It's like anything. It's like you can be the coolest person ever, but like if like you're not working as a team, it's like a sports. Like I grew up playing hockey. If you're you're the only hockey, you're only the player skinning around the whole ice. Like that's not fun. Like working together as a team. So no, I think that's really a true kind of a statement, like for any level of where you're at, if you're starting out, if you're low skill, if you're big leagues playing, with touring, like Absolutely. it's such a thing to have to like, he wasn't a team player, so we replaced him. Like, that kind of thing.
Well, but it's the same, like watching how your company and your brand has grown, Brian. It's the same dedication. You take pride in everything you do, and we love watching your videos and how immaculate, watching that cable get pulled through the tie. I mean, these are things that you can sense in those moments, the level of intention and the high level of just wanting things to be great.
Absolutely.
And there are going to be, even with that intention, sometimes maybe things aren't great, but you learn from it and you keep moving. But that's why not, it's just something that's nice to see in not just music, but anywhere when you see pride of what the person is doing, whatever it might be, it just makes all the difference in the world. So, but these are things, hopefully you don't, if you're so passionate about what you do, these are things we don't need to tell you. You're already kind of living in this world, but it is good to talk about for the awareness of it and how, it does make the difference, in so many cases, for somebody's success. And it's not, and it may not always be the greatest musician or the greatest artist or worker in whatever case, but sometimes the spirit and everything else that comes with that particular person, adds so much value to the overall good of that organization or that company,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've already had so much great conversation, but before we move on, I do want to pass it over to Grant to talk about a couple of our sponsors that make the podcast possible. So I'll throw it to you, Grant.
All right, here we go. The first sponsor I want to talk about, Andy, Brian, and myself are very familiar with the Guitar Sanctuary. So wanted to chat about the Guitar Sanctuary. That is where Brian is currently, and Andy is, as you said, 10 minutes down the road and goes to the Guitar Sanctuary often. Brian actually said a little while ago in one of the episodes, Andy, while we're talking about the Guitar Sanctuary, that he was, in his room back in the Bat Cave where he is right now, and he heard someone playing out front. He's like, "Oh, that's an Andy lick. That Andy's here at the shop." Like he picked it right away. And we were talking about, is it the player or the gear in that episode? And that came up, and I just love it. So you're already, at the Guitar Sanctuary playing guitar, and a lot of the gear that we're kind of chatting about today. If you're watching on video, some of the amps Andy has, the wall of amps, which is beautiful. Andy has behind him the guitars. You can pick up this gear at the Guitar Sanctuary. What's the one you're just pointing at, Andy?
Oh, that's the newer Sir SL68. That's the Mark 1. I have a Mark II over here. I've been using these a lot. It's very much a 68 plexi type circuit, so which I have an old original 68, and this holds up extremely well. And I'm actually using this quite a bit in recordings these days and some of my live gigs. Yes, and I've got some old Mesa boogies up here, but they do carry a lot of Mesa stuff as well. And the funny quick story, we just had Valentine's Day. This guitar was built 30 years ago yesterday.
I saw you post that.
Yes.
Yeah. And Brian Meter, who is, my go-to main cat over there. He's like, I've said this before, if you know the old movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure, when Pee-wee walks into the magic shop and the guy's like, "Pee-wee, we got the new, onion gum or whatever," Brian is that guy for me, we've got this new. And but Brian, he saw me post that about the birthday of my guitars. Well, the first thing he sold yesterday was one of my Ibanez AT100s to somebody. Yes. It was a woman buying the guitar for her husband for Valentine's Day. I was like, well, how cool is that? Beautiful. 30 years later, this guitar is living on, Anyway, but that's the thing. It's also, the Sanctuary is a very dangerous place because it's easy to fall in love, and they just have the coolest guitars, and I'm always, I get in trouble there a lot.
I love it.
I was going to see Tommy Emmanuel a couple of months ago, and I've gotten to know Tommy over the years. He's probably the greatest musician I've ever witnessed. He's just such a beautiful soul, beautiful player. Now, he plays those Maton guitars, and anyway, I went in and played one, and I fell in love with it, and I bought it. And then took it down and hung out with Tommy before the show, and we played Matons together. So now I'm a big Maton acoustic guitar fan. So
love it. So Maton, Ibanez, Mesa, Sir, all the stuff available at the Guitar Sanctuary,
and my entire pedal board, basically. I think Brian's got a picture of it somewhere. If you do ever talk about pedal boards, you guys talk about pedal boards on this show. I thought it was chairman of the board.
Sometimes.
We dabble.
Usually just coffee.
We dabble.
Usually just
I've been
coffee,
fooled.
But...
I've been
triple filtered water too.
Yes, and that's the other thing. I'm actually a coffee boy for the Sanctuary. I do bring coffee. I'm always texting, "Hey, I'm on my way. I'm going to get a coffee for me and Brian Meter for sure." And Brian Omilion's like, "Just give me some water. They have the best water." Okay, I'll bring you some water. Okay, but Daniel, the luthier there. So he doesn't like Starbucks. He likes this other craft coffee place called Duino. So I'll go there. So basically, if this guitar thing doesn't work out, I'm going to open up a company called Andy Doordashian. And that's going to be my thing. Where I'll just deliver coffee.
I'm on board.
But everybody likes that guy. If you show up and you got coffee guy. I mean, pretty much nobody's going to be hating. So
love it.
That's my fallback. I never had a backup plan until now. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the deal. Wait till you're 60 to have a backup plan.
Yep. Oh, I love it. So that's our first sponsor, the Guitar Sanctuary. Sorry. Probably the best plug we've ever had for one of our sponsors, backed up by our guest, Andy Timmons, the Guitar Sanctuary. And then next I want to tell you guys about Neural DSP. We're all familiar with Neural. They've done some secretive announcements at NAMM as well, which I'm very excited about. They recently launched the Morgan Amp Suite, which is a lot of our listeners I know would love Morgan amps. And so there's now an amp suite available through Neural for a plugin. The desktop editor is now live, Cortex Control, so you can edit your Quad Cortex on your computer and get a little bit more in-depth on editing as well. And you can actually get 30% off all plugins that are 90 days or older with the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN. That is 70% away from free. Pretty good deal. So check out Neural DSP, and you can get a deal on their plugins. Lastly, I want to tell you guys about the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. I actually just sold something yesterday on the Sweetwater Gear Exchange, one of our products, and was really pumped. It's going out the door today. And the great thing about the Gear Exchange is you can sell used gear without paying any fees. So a lot of the other retailers that are doing similar things, Reverb, eBay, they charge higher and higher fees. But the Gear Exchange, you can say no to the fees by keeping it on a Sweetwater gift card, all of your earnings, and then you can purchase something on sweetwater.com. So check out sweetwater.com/used and see what you can buy or sell today. That is it for our first round of sponsors that make the podcast possible. Brian, I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you. All right. Well, I love history. I love talking about history. I am a behind the scenes, documentary type of person. So everything we've already talked about, I love.
And this is going into Brian's documentary, by the way.
Yes,
Andy.
this is a documentary in my life.
Serendipitous. Awesome.
A biography. I was a 1990. I was born in 93. So, but I think moving in, we should switch switch over into just kind of talking like gear run through, just talking through. You sent me some photos, Grant. If you'll enable screen sharing, I would love to kind of show off the current version of Andy's rig. I know we're always changing, always kind of.
It's still intact. Nothing has moved since it left your shop. So
famous last words. Let's talk to you next week and see if it's still the same thing.
Word, but I'm just saying. For now, it's still pretty. Once I start getting in there with getting the screwdriver to pry up the Loctite,
I remember
it will never look the same.
So you went to NAMM, and I ended up going to NAMM, and I remember you had came to me. You had called me, and you're like, "Hey, I need to do this tweak," and it was just supposed to be a couple things, and you're like, I leave on Wednesday, and it was like the Thursday beforehand, and I only work 4 days a week. So I was like, yeah, sure, I can totally do it. And somehow my couple tweaks turned into me completely cleaning off the entire board and rewiring the entire board, because with NAMM and travel, things get crazy. And I remember I finished it up, and then you left the next day or anything. Right. And I always jokingly say, if I don't hear from the client, usually that's a good sign.
Right. Sure.
So I didn't have to. You didn't have to say anything, or airline damaged it. But
no,
you sent me over some photos, and this is, if you're listening, watching, your screen is paused. I'm paused right now. I don't know why. Okay. So if we can see that.
Yeah. So when you hear my tone now, and when I do my live broadcasts or when I'm recording, that's. George Fuller, the owner of the Guitar Sanctuary, actually built my home. He's why I'm in McKinney back in '97. And so the upstairs of the home is my studio. So that's where I'm sitting now. It's basically like a rec room. And then there's a bedroom next door, but we soundproofed all the walls. So next door, there's some very loud speaker cabinets. So you'll see those 3 Mesa rectifier 212 cabs. The top 2 have vintage 30s. The bottom one, I sought out some EVM 100s after playing through a cab on the pedal show you guys might have seen where poor Dan, famously, we had to stop filming because the tone was so amazing in the room anyway. So that bottom cab has got the higher wattage EVs. And so I mic it through, usually with 57s. I do have a Mesanovic ribbon on one of the speakers because that is a mic I got turned on to by Josh Smith that I record. He recorded my last Electric Truth record, and we just did sessions for a new record a couple weeks ago in LA. And that's what I'm finishing up here now as we talk. But those mics feed, I've got some vintage Neve 1272 preamps. And for broadcasting to you guys, I'm mixing all that into a high dollar little Mackie mixer. So I got 3 guitar channels, playback of a track I'll do later, and my voice, and I just feed that into stereo into the Apollo. But anyway, you see a very tattered AC30 that I used for a track just the day before. That's a really great old sounding. It's a 64 AC30 with the top boost was added in the 90s, but man, it's a special old circuit. And then you have some pedals, I think, to show, right?
Yes, I do.
This glorious. Hey,
there we go.
Right. The worse you play, the more pedals you need. So here we are. Yeah, Command Central.
Well,
there it is.
I mean, yeah, I see your Muse driver.
Yes, you see,
so you have quite a few signature pedals, I think.
Well, that's been an amazing thing, as my career's gone on. I think the first company I think that I worked with was Exotic, and they had a preamp called the BB preamp. It's not on my board right now, sadly, but it's still a great pedal. We collaborated. Then I think maybe JHS was next. We did something called the AT. That's the one on the far right, the red pedal, and that's this. Here's the amp.
Oh, it's big.
They had, and this is thanks to Brian Meter, they had this pedal called the Angry Charlie that, I walk in one day, hey, Andy, I think you might like this Angry Charlie pedal. And I had it on my board, but I really wasn't using it because, and this is all feeding through these Lone Stars. I've got one Lone Star here and then and another Lone Star over here that's slaving. So it's a stereo. You hear my...
and can I just clarify, for the people listening, yes, this is actually me playing the guitar for these next few sections
right on, Grant.
through Andy's board. I just wanted to clarify, it's Grant playing.
That learn guitar in 7 days program really works. That's
amazing.
That's crazy. I can also draw Winky. Anyway, that's for another old people reference. Yeah, so that's. I mean, I had that Angry Charlie on my board, but normally I was using the lead channel on the Lone Star and hitting the front end with either a BB or a TS-808. But one day I was doing a gig and I was in Swindon, or not too far from where Daniel Steinhardt lives, and he came to this gig. He brought Dave Gregory, his bandmate, the old XTC guitar player, and the effects loop wasn't working. I'm sure it was just probably the preamp tube that wasn't working. I didn't have time to swap that out, so I couldn't use the effects loop. So I had to put effects into the front of the amp, which meant I couldn't use the amp distortion. That gets messy for me. So I used the Angry Charlie as the lead tone that night, and I had an amazing gig. It's like, wow, this pedal sounds great. I thought I had more control than what I was getting from the amp gain section. So I started using it, and as time went on, it started becoming the way that I was running my pedal board. With that particular year's NAMM show, whenever it was, sometime in the 10s, whenever it might be, I thought I need to meet this guy Josh. I went to the NAMM show. I found his booth. I just wanted to say that I really dig your Angry Charlie pedal. He goes, yeah, we had that pedal out for a long time. Then all of a sudden, we started selling a lot of Angry Charlie pedals. So if you ever is there anything about it you'd want to change? And there was. And so we kind of collaborated and modified that circuit. And that's what became the AT pedal. And that still is my main lead sound for a lot of stuff. The Muse driver and the Halo are my two newest collaborations, and both with the Robert Keeley company. The Halo was the one that kind of started this relationship, and it goes back to another NAMM show meeting where I was standing with Daniel Steinhardt, and I was asking him, I really have this idea for delay pedal. I was using the two Memory Man echoes for a long time, and I was using the Strymon to kind of replicate that. It did a good job. It wasn't quite. And the Strymon is great, but it does the timeline does like 1,000 things. I'm using one or two sounds, so I thought I just want to really highly refine the sound that I'm trying to get and put it in a smaller package. And I asked Daniel, who I have amazing respect for, of course, his knowledge of all things tone and gear, and he just without flinching said, Robert Keeley's the guy. And we marched right over. He took me to Robert, introduced me, and this might have been 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. And yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Robert's got this beautiful, like upbeat, positive spirit, and we really resonated immediately just as people. But while we're working on this new Echo circuit, and once we have that together with this new the chip we're working with, once we get that platform, then we'll get you in and we'll see what we can do. And so a good amount of time went by, and so maybe it was early 2020, I want to say. I finally get up to, because there was all kinds of things that were getting in the way. But once we finally got in room, and I brought EP3s, Memory Man, Strymon, we listened to all these things, and I voiced what I was hoping to do. And we listened to their circuit at the time, and I think they thought it was going to be easy. I think they thought, we'll tweak this thing. But it turned into a year and a half of working. But it was just the most glorious just path. It was just this, sometimes frustrating, but they were the exact like mind of me, which was like, if we're going to do this, it has to beat everything that I've got. If I'm going to be associated with something and it's going to replace something on my board, it's going to be what I'm really using, or it's not going to happen. Right. I've always had a thing about when you would see guys in ads back in the 70s and 80s, and I'm like, that guy doesn't play that. There's no way that's how he's getting that sound. You just kind of just knew that people were putting their names and faces on stuff just to sell, and it was about money. I never wanted to be that guy. I'm very loyal, and I really want things to be exactly. So we spent that time, and I got to say, we beat all of the things that I was wanting to sound as good as, and came up with this tone that you hear me use way too much of. Hopefully we're going to get this in stereo eventually, meaning the audio we're recording. Sometimes the internet doesn't allow us to go stereo. There's a bit of reverb at the board that I don't normally have on. So as much as I loved that process, and I'm still uber proud of how. Yeah. And again, it was a very selfish endeavor in that. It was just a pedal that I wanted. This was the sound I've been kind of curating for years, and we got it to the greatest iteration that I could possibly hope for. Yeah. But the fact that then other people dug it, like I hadn't really thought about. Oh, well, of course, we hope that people dig it, but I had no idea how it was going to resonate, and how many halos I've seen out there, which is it's just incredible that the people dig it.
And that's the cool thing about the Halo too, and it's you sometimes don't even feel like you need an extra reverb pedal. It's so nice and full sounding. And this is the thing when I am building sometimes 3 to 4 rigs a week, and I work 4 days a week, so I'm cranking out like a rig a day. Sometimes I'll get stuck playing on some certain pedals for 20, 30 minutes. I'm like, shoot, I should have been doing another video or something.
Well, that's a good sign. You're having fun.
And it's the Halo was the most recent one, and I always get stuck on it. It's really nice. Yeah. The delay. It's also at the store we get the phone call. Hey, how do I get the Andy Timmons delay on the timeline? Like that was always the phone call we would get, and I'm like, buy a Halo. It's right there. It's the first sound on the Halo, and it sounds fantastic.
That was the idea. I mean, there was a lot of deep editing that went into that. The way I was using the Strymon, but I wanted the Halo to be like you turn it on, and so now there must be reverb. I think there's a knob on the back of the Lone Star that's got a bit of reverb on. So usually that's off it, but I rarely use reverb because the thing that makes this the Halo special is the way the echoes, they feather into each other and turns into kind of a reverb. And that's all. And I do have an expression pedal connected to it, which you can control any parameter, but I just have it as a mix. For my solo pieces, that's a huge part of that tone there.
Love it.
Yeah, it's like a sustain pedal on the piano. I can have a note,
and it's not overpowering either. That's
it's
the cool
not.
thing
You're
about
not
it.
hearing da 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 da. It's really how a really great sounding tape will just kind of get out of the way, you know. And with a bit of that modulation that a good, slightly out of tune tape, you can hear how my note stays pure, but the echo around it starts to detune. Hence the word halo. It kind of sounds. I picture that note with this little halo around it. Yeah. I had this beautiful phrase in mind. It didn't come out. So, but now the other part of that tone is the most recent Keeley collaboration. Throughout all the work on the Halo, I was using an old Keeley modded blues driver, and that's how I knew Robert in the first place, was from that circuit. But as I got deeper into the process with Aaron Pierce and Robert Keeley, I thought, well, there's this other circuit I'd really love to toy with because it does amazing things, but there's things I would change about it. And we finally did a modded version of the Keeley mod to the blues driver and put that out as the AT Super mod, as a limited run pedal a year ago. And it was at a time where Keeley was starting to get into, they can now make their own casing. So now they're completely, start to finish there in Oklahoma City. And they're changing their line a bit, and they were coming up with some new drives. So, I very happily found they wanted to continue to make that pedal. So we had even more flexibility. And what ended up happening to further, I just wanted to carve out a bit more low end, and we spent several sessions. The beauty with Keeley is that they're 3 hours from me. They're in Oklahoma City, and I'm in North Texas. And so I can either drive up there or they can come here. And that's where the magic happens. You got to be in the room with somebody. If you're working on audio, you can send a text going, yeah, it needs a little more air, kind of, I feel. No, you got to be in the room to experience it, because there's no words for that feeling and that sound. And when you get it. We knew when we had the Halo, the goosebumps, the hair was up. We knew we had it. And we were working on the further mod of that blues driver circuit, and we were trying different things with EQ and some compression, and it was kind of doing what I wanted. But then Robert had the epiphany, let's just try some germanium diodes. That might do, and it was instant magic. And so now the pedal, again, I wanted this really specific thing for my. And then what the germanium does, not only does it do a cool version of that kind of clean, broken up volume knob down, but it also works as a great boost. I'm using it as a boost for my AT JHS, where there's this thing where when you get a really nice fat lead tone, it sounds good, Grant.
Thank you guys. Been practicing.
You know Ace Frehley licks? His inner kiss coming out. But if you get that tone, and you go to the neck pickup, it generally tends to be a bit muddy and a little flubby. But what I'm doing now is hitting the front end of the JHS AT with the Muse driver in the germanium setting, very low drive, but a bit of a treble added. And you hear that sponge come in, and that
it's still
carve.
in the neck, For those listening,
the
last two were on the neck.
Here's just the JHS. This is bridge pickup. Now I'm going to go to the neck pickup and add the Muse driver before it and the Germanium 7. It's a sound I've been looking for a very long time and haven't figured out how to do it. Basically wanting a high gain lead tone on the neck pickup that's not muddy.
Yeah.
And so two things are happening. That Germanium is carving out some of the low end, which you're going to need if the bridge pickup is woolly and the neck is muddy. But then also, just so the Germanium, but plus what the EQ circuit is doing to carve out a little bit of low end as well. So I'm a happy camper and just couldn't be more thrilled to have a team like Keeley willing to go down the path with me and have a blast along the way. And they've got some new drives coming up in another month or so that they're just going to blow some minds. They're doing some incredibly creative circuits. You saw it with the Noble Screamer, where you can combine all these, the TS-808 with the Noble drive thing. And that's what's going on with this new pedal's called the Muse driver. So you can combine Robert's original modded circuit, then you can have the Keeley circuit with my additional low end carve, or you can combine that with the Germanium versus silicon. And it's the sonic versatility is incredible. And what's cool about also let me see if I can get this to happen. So this is just the Muse driver with the drive cranked up, but on the Germanium setting. Normally, if you drive a blues driver circuit, it gets muddy, flubby. There's no way it's going to sound good. But that's with the drive all the way up. Now I've got two Muse drivers, so if I switch over to the way I normally use it, same pedal.
Cleans up nicely.
It's crazy, right?
That's nuts.
Big classy as well.
Yeah, that's but that's what I'm looking for when I turn that volume knob down. I do have a treble bleed mod in most of my guitar to really get that nice sparkle and that detail. So that's become those two will always be on my board. I'm thinking about a third one. I mean, just there's so many things that it'll do, right? So anyway,
and I think as well as a total side here, I know we need to get to another ad here soon, but while we're on the topic, I think the other thing I want to highlight, especially if you're listening, because we're here watching this on, obviously on YouTube and stuff, but if you're listening, a lot of this, yes, you have great pedals. You spend a lot of time finding your tone and crafting your tone, but you're also getting really creative with pickup selection, with volume, with technique. And I think this kind of marriage of gear and technique is giving you these beautiful tones. Thank you.
You
can't really have one without the other. You can't get the tones you're getting with just practice, but you can't also get it with just gear. You kind of have to use it in one whole environment. And I love how you're explaining this, because I'm learning a lot here, and I'm thinking of how this applies to my board as well.
No, it is that is such a beautiful way to state that, Grant, because I mean, obviously these pieces of gear are helping me a lot, but it all starts in your ear. It all starts with you to have kind of an idea of what you're looking for, and for a lot of us, and still even, I've been playing now majority of my life. I'm 60. I've got my heroes. They're all in there. And I'm hearing EJ's tone. I'm hearing Hendrix. I'm hearing Stevie Ray, Luke at their, all my favorite, Carlton, all these great guitar sounds and that are very much part of my DNA because of my absorption. You hear it in Stevie Ray's playing. You hear Albert King and Hendrix. And all our heroes have their heroes. It's just how this whole thing keeps going. If anybody cites me as a sonic influence, I'm honored by that. It's incredible, and I feel silly because I'm just trying to be these other guys, But we end up being ourselves no matter what. Eventually, things come out as us, and it's that collection of what our ideas are of what a great sound is. But then also that as you become more connected with the instrument, and it becomes more of an emotional connection. then you're much more aware of what these pieces of gear can do to either inspire or get in the way, you know? And so again, never would I have thought, you know, at any point in my life, I would be in a situation where I would have these genius gear people that are happy to work with me. No, it's insane. I don't say that lightly. I'm just like, I just kind of shake my head and go, this is incredible. But what an honor. And it is just kind of, it's a testament to just keep showing up, keep doing it. Mm-hmm. You know, again, this is a full circle moment in the interview where there wasn't a plan for this. I couldn't have imagined this. I love this. You know, that's why the three of us are sitting here talking, and anybody who's watching or listening, this is something we have in our life that not everybody has, you know. Some people, you know, may have some hobbies or whatever, but the level of passion that we know we have for music in general, the guitar specifically, and the gear that it takes to get these sounds that we love, you know, come on, man. This is, it's a gift that, you know, none of us should take for granted and take lightly. It's really, really special, you know, and when it comes to the gear and the pedals, of course we're going to go, what's that guy using, or what's she using? How'd she get, you know, whatever the tone might be, because we just know that pedal's going to help us get closer, and it absolutely can. But there's the time involved, there's the development of the technique, and your ear getting to the point of knowing how to draw these sounds out of your guitar. You know, your physiology is going to be different than mine, and different than Jeff's, different from Alan Holdsworth's. You know, the way we touch a string, so you start to make that connection between the physicality of this thing not plugged in. What is it? What is that tone like? And then how can I get that to come through, you know, through the speakers, right? That's the challenge, right? But for the pursuit, it's frustrating. It's beautiful. And when you get those moments of beauty where you get stuck for 20 minutes, Brian, because you're having a good time, that's it, man. That's, you know, what's better than that? I can't think of much, you know.
Yeah.
Well, a couple things, but that warm coffee, a loving family. Talking about my guitar playing son, he made Valentine's dinner for his girlfriend and my wife and I last night. So these are good times. These are good times. That's good times. Pretty good. He made the best mac and cheese I've ever had. Now I'm a Kraft guy, you know, because milk powder is cheese, right?
Totally.
I'm true Midwest American, but he made this like with like pepper jack and like this great kind of, I don't know,
make my mouth water.
Homemade, and he had these Wagyu strip steak things he made. God, it was like, yeah, he's getting great at guitar, but even better at cooking. Look out, folks.
Yes.
Alex Timmons. Yeah. Anyway, all these things, but yeah, the pursuit of tone and music and expression and what that can do for our spirit. We need this, you know, now more than ever, you know?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And before we do our last set of sponsors, I just have to say, I appreciate the fact that you have learned how I want to say it. You want to know how your tone sounds even before it's plugged in. Like turning your volume down and playing it just an electric guitar bare, it still sounds like you. That's the thing. Like,
for sure.
It's your tone. So I appreciate the fact that you take that in account for before the pedals. Like you could sit around a campfire with that Ibanez guitar unplugged and it would still sound like you. Like it's you.
In a leprechaun suit, in a leprechaun outfit.
In a leprechaun suit, Paul McCartney.
Now
I'm like picturing an episode.
I'm picturing me in a flammable leprechaun outfit. That's the next album cover. Yeah. Electric leprechaun.
We'll just somehow convince Paul McCartney to do that, and then we will all get together. We will all fly together, and we'll sit around a campfire in leprechaun suits, having a podcast, playing unplugged guitars.
Yeah. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, Well, I'm not encouraging anybody lighting their leprechaun out. Let me disclaimer: I'm not encouraging that this is a good idea to light leprechaun suits on fire. Okay, I'm hoping you don't. I'm hoping you don't have one. I'm really hoping you don't. But if you do, please don't ignite. Yeah.
No, we got a plethora of Spider-Man costumes for my son at home, but that's about it.
I'll bet. So, did you spend more time at NAMM or Disneyland? Tell the truth. Yeah.
That's a little bit of both.
All right. Well, see, these are good things. All right.
Well, speaking of Disneyland, which is also a joyful place, these last three sponsors are also bring a lot of joy in the music industry, and they just help, get you where you're going from A to Z or whatever you're doing. If you're an at-home player, if you're traveling or whatever, are the guys over at Mono Creators. Mono Creators have amazing gig bags, dual cases for you bring in your two favorite guitars or bring in double Ibanez Andy Timmons signature guitars.
I have a mono bag at least. I do. Yeah.
They're great. Yeah. I mean, mono may be a single thing, but you can have multiples of them. And I do because I have backpacks and pedal boards and cases, and they also have brand new power supplies. They've released a new updated angled style pedal board. Go check them out. Really affordable. Use the discount code Chairmen CHAIRMEN for 10% off at monocreators.com. Next are going to be the guys over at Stringjoy. We, as musicians, need strings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't play without strings, then
it's air guitar. It's air guitar.
It's for sure an air guitar. It's just a heavy air guitar. So go to stringjoy.com. Use the code BOARDS for 10% off. They are subscription based. So depending on how many strings you use, if you're a string destroyer, as Mason says for himself, where he goes through multiple packs of strings, sometimes in a week, you can get multiple strings ordered in. If you're not close to a local guitar shop, they can send you what you need for your month. Get you going on acoustic. I think it's acoustic or electric or bass strings. They have all the different string options, different types of coat. Check them out, stringjoy.com. The last of our sponsors are definitely some of the best guys out there. Pun intended, are the guys over at Bestronics or btpa.com. They and Brad, we came up with a slogan last week, and now I wish I could remember the slogan. It was really good. Best part of waking up is talking to I can't remember what it was. That's Folgers. But
go back to last week.
Go back to last week.
There's probably recorded evidence that you could reference. Yeah,
I did. I'll remember for next time because it was so good. But the guys over at Bestronics simply are the best. Always pun intended because. But they have all these square plug connectors, Mogami cabling, looms, junction boxes. They do all sorts of stuff. They supply the 2.1 millimeter DC connectors that we all use for all of our builds, and they're great. They're fast communicating. When I get an email from Bestronics that my shipment is on the way, it's great. So check them out at btpa.com. Use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS for 10% off of your order. Well, I would say to kind of summarize the episode, I do have a funny. It's funny and also like I wish I could go back set a story. You know, like you ever have those times like, man, if you could go back and do one thing, what could you do differently in life?
Right.
So I've been here at the sanctuary for 6 years. I just had my anniversary last month, and I think it was my first year here. I built you a board, Andy.
Yes.
And I brought it to your house. And it was like one of the first times I had brought it to your house. And I was like, I didn't know he was so close. And my wife and my daughter, because I only had them at the time, they flew out of town. So I delivered the board and we were just talking and you're like, so what are you doing tonight? And I was like, oh, it's been a long week. The family's gone. I'm probably just gonna like go see a movie and just relax, because to me, like movies by myself is like my favorite relax. And you're like, well, we're gonna grill some steaks and we're gonna drink some beer if you want to stay. And I said, that's such a kind offer, but I think I was just so tired. I was just like, I think I'm just gonna go to the movies. And I left.
Oh, man,
and
that's
I
all
told
good,
my,
man.
I told my coworker, Trey. I told Trey. And he looks at me, he goes, "Dear God, what did you do?" And I was like, "What?" He goes, "When you get that offer, you do it." So
it's because you said beer instead of triple filtered water. If you
that's
triple
what it was.
filtered water, you would have.
I don't remember the beer part. I was
or something.
Anyway.
It was steaks and something. I can't remember. It was years ago. But I just remember being like, "Oh, okay," and I was just like, and I even said, I was like, and anytime someone was like, "You go back to 1 year," I'm like, 5 years ago. So I just always think,
let's rectify that. But I'm gonna let Alex cook dinner. He did such a good job.
Yes.
We'll get you over for some of that mac and cheese. I'll get him to make that again. That would be good.
Let's do it.
And we'll just do filtered water. I don't need any beer either. But yeah, we'll do. We'll do
I don't know if it was beer. I can't remember. But I know it was steaks, and I was just like, whatever.
Who knows?
Me, dumb year. That was me.
No, dude, isn't that funny how things like that can stick out in your mind? And for me, it was like, oh man, I totally get where you're at. Because raising a son, and like sometimes it's nice just to have a quiet house or whatever. It
is.
It is hard to say no to when the holiday is showing in theaters as well. So let's give Brian a little bit.
Fair enough.
It was. Yeah, it was Twilight. It was Twilight. They were doing a replay of that movie. It was all right. I had
no judgment. Judge-free zone here, man.
Well, the finish of the episode. Grant, do you have any final questions before we throw it to Andy to serenade us with one of his wonderful songs?
I have a question for you.
I'm gonna do my version of Freebird if that's cool. It's 11 minutes though. I hope you guys are cool with that.
No, I usually go for the 15-minute version, but yeah, that's fine.
I can,
my question. This is pedalboard related.
Yeah.
As a general practice, how important is signal chain to you with your pedals?
Oh, it's tantamount. I mean, sure. The order is very important. If that's the question.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a gain junkie, and there's just the pedalboard is large because it's a series of ascending gain levels. The beauty of the G3 is being able to swap that order. Talking about the gig rig switcher that I use, my incredibly talented and lovely friend Daniel Steinhardt. You can get in, and if you want, sometimes I want to drive before a compressor. I don't use that signal chain as much these days, but I used to, when I had the BB, I was running that before the Carl Martin compressor, which is a little kind of antithetical to how much people might think about that, having the compression first and the gain. But sometimes things sound a certain way, and you just kind of go with it. So the G3 makes it really easy if I do want to stop. If I want to swap orders. But like when I'm running that Muse driver, as a boost for the AT JHS, I do want it beforehand. It would sound completely ratty the other way around. That was a very short answer to a very deep question, but yeah, I mean, always any time-based things are going to be either at the end of the chain or in the effects loop, meaning any kind of verbs, choruses. I'm not using a verb in pedal form. I do have the Hydra, but that's used as more of a tremolo. And I've got a spiral array chorus. It's a kind of a nice. If I want to get into some of that, don't use it much, but it's there if and I need it.
Speaking of Lukather.
Yeah, for sure. And all those, great kind of 80s Andy Summers.
Oh, sorry, you go.
No. Just, any of those classic kind of, but usually, not always though. Sometimes I use it on a distorted tone, just for kind of a special effecty kind of thing. It's definitely not an on for a whole tune kind of thing for me. Yep. But again, if I always want to color up something a bit, sometimes I might get it real twisty and have it be almost like a fast rotary Leslie thing if you get it just right. The old TC course has a great version of that sound if you just turn everything up all the way. There's a track I did on my second record called Ear Ecstasy 2 called Is This What You Want? And the whole solo was done with the TC on the whole time with everything cranked all the way up. And it's a killer tone. It's a very cool. That's actually one of my favorite choruses. It's just a bit larger and sometimes space, size does matter, Grant.
I've heard.
Somebody saw the recent version of my board and reached out to me on my email and was so sad to see a mini tube screamer. Like, well, I'll send you. I've got a TS-808 mod. Blah blah blah. But I said, yeah, but this thing sounds good and it's small.
Yeah.
I said, I don't use it that much. It's like he was so disappointed. I've got an old TS-808. It does sound amazing, but sometimes But anyway,
I have seen your pedal room. I remember coming over.
It's a little messy.
It looks like a Guitar Center of pedals where you just got, and most of the time it's like 8 or 9 of the same pedal, and you're like, yeah, it's like your the switch thing. You're like, I liked how this switch sounded like on the BB, like that kind of stuff. I think that's great.
I mean that when we did the later edition of the AT, the signature BB pedal, they sent me 2 prototypes because we could never quite get back to what my original very early version of that pedal was, and they tried and it was just kind of a magic pedal. And they finally they were trying different paints, they were doing all these things. It was crazy. So they sent me 2 prototypes for that last iteration, and there was one that was clearly, oh, that's the one. That's the sound. You guys did it. What is like? Oh, we were so afraid you were going to say that. It's this really shitty switch that will go bad, but it's the sound. So I went for the crappier switch, and it made the difference in the openness of the top end was stunning. It wasn't just like, oh, maybe we should go with a more reliable switch. Nope, this thing sounds amazing. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's just the things we torture ourselves with, but they do add up. You start adding up all these little things that do make a difference, and look no further than Eric Johnson and what he's gone through to get his tone to the level that they're at. He wasn't fucking around. He took it serious.
Cables, angle of the pedals.
Dude, I've got stories that corroborate all of this, and maybe we should make that another episode.
Yeah, that's a big topic.
It is, and I don't say this flippantly or lightly, but I have so much love and respect for Eric. But yeah, he just went farther and was willing to go the distance more than most people. So, but he would be the first to admit, well, sometimes you also just need to play. You got to balance, you got to temper that. We've been talking for an hour plus, and if you're listening, this is all great, and hopefully it's helping in some ways. But you got to play,
Yeah.
You don't want to spend all your time deep diving into opinions on that chip. It's like, well, you got to play too. Don't forget that component. So it's you're finding that healthy balance of the pursuit, the joy, and the just the pure entertainment and frustration that goes along with it. But make sure you're playing the entire time along with it to make sure that you're holding up your end of the bargain of the sonic equation. Write that down. That was good. What did I just say? I think that made sense. I don't know.
I got it. Message received.
Sonic equation.
Love it.
That's our new band.
I also think like what you just said, like the joy is also having the joy of watching others perform too, because like,
oh god, yeah,
when you're playing so much, like some people you can get burned out of playing, maybe you don't, I don't know, but like I had the opportunity to go to the Joe Bonamassa concert, which I ran into you and your lovely wife, and and the cool thing is you're friends with all these guys. But there was definitely multiple times that I looked back from where I was sitting at you, and you looked like a little kid in the candy shop watching him play.
Dude,
I was like you were another person. Like you were, Andy Timmons is in the crowd watching Joe Bonamassa absolutely rip, and
that's me at every show. If I'm going to go to a show, I'm immersed. But seeing Joe now, I've seen Joe now 2 or 3 times in the last couple of years, and I hadn't seen him. I'd heard the recordings, and I say, this guy's a great player, of course. But man, seeing Joe live, and he's also a tone, maestro. It's some of the best tones I've ever heard live. It's so well dialed in what he's done with his rig in the front of house. And I commented to him after the gig. It's like there was never a harsh tone. It was all you went from Esquire and Strats and Les Pauls, and everything was just right. And plus his playing is just off the charts great, and the scope of the show, how the show is paced, and just the variety of stuff that he does, it's really inspiring, but also humbling. And I will say that so I did the recordings with Josh in L.A. a couple weeks ago, and I visited Josh and Joe. They were recording at Sunset Sound the day before I was starting my record. And Josh was like, yeah, Joe can come over Sunday to play if you want him on a track. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, you know. And then I'm like, oh shit, you know, fucking. And he comes in, and there was a track that we didn't finish for the last record. It was kind of a slow shuffle that Josh wrote called Ray, kind of a Ray Charles groove. And it's slow blues is not my comfort zone, where you might think Joe Bonamassa. So we're trading solos on this tune that's like his wheel, and it took me about 24 hours to get over the ass whooping that I got. It was so great. I did listen back to one of the tracks. Like, okay, I do sound like me. I'm okay. But man, hearing a guy in his element playing that great, and of course he brings whatever 59 he pulled off the rack that day. He comes in with the Les Paul, plugs into Josh's rig, and it sounded exactly like Joe. But it was very humbling and it was very inspiring. So, you know, after I came up from being depressed of like, I suck, you know, it was just inspiring. So just, okay, work harder, man, you know. But yeah, that will come out. I know Josh released a little clip on his Instagram. Yeah. But then all the guitar channels picked up on the. I was like, man, okay. But Joe he just killed it. And so yeah, if you haven't seen Joe, man, go see him. He's out on tour a lot this year. And I always say, see the greats, man. Go out and you know, be inspired. Check out the tones and how people are doing stuff. So yeah, I'll never be able to play blues like he and Josh are just such great players. And they're not just blues guys. Obviously, they have a wide spectrum, but their foundation is something that, you know, I can keep trying to do. But I'll be okay at it. But I just gotta. With all these things, and I mentioned the sincere feeling I had of I was really kind of bummed for a minute, you know, like, oh fuck, I suck. You got to be careful to realize that, well, I don't have to be Joe Bonamassa, or Eric Johnson, or insert your favorite player. You just have to keep on your path and keep finding the things that you do great, you know. And hopefully there's things that people like about what I do enough that I can just be okay being me. But it took me getting into my 50s before that started to be real. Whereas it was always a case of, you know, being bummed out or hearing people that I would be inspired, but also be, oh man, you know, that self-defeating, deprecating thing that we can get into psychologically. So you got to be careful with that. But I overall have always taken seeing, you know, Steve Vai or Satriani or whoever and taking it home with me going, that's possible. I may not be able to do that, but I can at least be inspired to push myself harder to be a better version of myself, you know. And that's the healthy place to be. That's the real place. And when you turn around and look at me at that gig, that's what's happening. I'm like, man, this is what a joy to be alive and to witness this great band, you know, and these great musicians, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Lasts a long time, you know.
Well, thank you. This has been a great episode. Great last hour and a half. Grant, anything final before we throw it on over?
Oh, I'm looking forward to forward to hearing Andy do his thing here.
Freebird, here we go.
Freebird.
So let's see why.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching, for listening. We'll throw it over to Andy in just a second, and he'll lead us out with a song.
Yeah, I'm going to do a ballad called On Your Way, Sweet Souls. It's Cry For You used to be one of my most requested songs, and still is. I do love the ballads, but this one's kind of grown in its own way. But It does feature, I mean, we're here talking about gear, so it's going to feature the Muse driver a lot. The main body of the tune is all going to be on the Muse driver. But then when I switch to higher gain, it's the JHS AT with the another Muse driver in germanium mode, just as a boost, basically. Awesome. And of course that Halo, loud and proud. But here we go. Let me see. I should have a track ready to go here. See if I can get.
love it.
All right. Punch me in at bar 2. I got a couple of fixes. It was, I was contractually obligated to make a few mistakes so people didn't think it was like a pre-record. So just so you know, those were very purposeful wrong notes.
Hey, I also love the fact that you smile. Like, you don't beat yourself up about it. You just smile into it. So I love it.
What are you gonna do, man? We're live. It's happening. Why not?
I love it.
It's all good. Well, the thing is, it's one of those tunes that I like to play it different every time, and so I put myself out on a ledge, because there's specific melodies in the chorus I stick to, but all the verses, which I can play like I did on the original record, but I go off script all the time now and just kind of play something fresh and in the moment. Sometimes beauty happens, and sometimes you might, that didn't quite work out, but I prefer that. You know what I mean? I like stepping on that edge and just seeing what can happen. It's fun.
I love it. Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, man.
Thank you for being. We know we're only 10 minutes away, but I can feel the tone. I can already feel it.
All right.
So
if you step outside, you probably could hear it. My poor neighbors.
Exactly.
Well, so fun. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna, as we say, we're gonna jump back in our Mazda Miata on our way to Tone Town. We're gonna get back in there with our warm coffee and our definitely warm water because this ice is gone.
That looks like
it's gone. But until next time, thank you, Andy.
Yeah,
thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
I do have a board tweak, so I'll see you soon, Brian.
Yes.
Just one little thing.
See you guys.
Oh, see you guys.
All right.